Hey everyone, how's it going? Thank you for coming out in the morning. I know it isn't easy to wake up in Berlin. Um, I'm gonna change things up a bit and not talk about what I planned to talk about originally, and instead talk about how we got here. As a company, as a group of people who work together, what were the things that around us were happening that brought us to building the technology that we're working on today? Hey, how's it going? My name is Aidan. I'm a co-founder and CEO of ChainSafe Systems. And at ChainSafe Systems, we're a blockchain research and development firm where our goal, our mission, is to build the infrastructure that will empower developers to build the things that we all dream would be around us. We started out, my partners and I, at this Ethereum developers meetup. We heard each other speak. I remember my one partner and I, Stu, we each made a comment during the meetup and heard each other speak and then followed up with each other and became best friends. And since then, we've met the rest of our partners and obviously have formed a company together. This is where we kind of first started renting a little bit of space. This is a hack lab in Toronto. And my goal in telling everyone this story of how we got together to working on this infrastructure is to remind everybody how we as a community got to the place we are today. 5 years ago, we weren't sitting in incredible auditoriums like this. And it's because of the hard work and commitment of people who honestly love this technology for the sake of the technology that we have gotten to where we are today. It isn't because of, some crazy go-to-market strategy that everyone's building on Ethereum. It's because of the stuff that people like us do every single day. This was our second, but really our first official meeting place. It was the Toronto Reference Library, and we used to rent space in their extra offices on the bottom floor. About once or twice a week, we could get away with it. And that's where, honestly, we had our first kind of real meetings. We then needed more regular space, so we moved into Stu's condo. So we were working out of his living room for a little while. That was really fun. But we also decided, okay, we need more serious space for us to work out of. And so we, from our friends at a meetup, got a hot desk at someone's architecture office. Thanks for that, Craig. We really appreciate that. And this is where kind of our first real personal office was. In this tiny room, about 10 of us would fit in. It really didn't give us the things we needed. And so one night, our neighbors moved out. And this is where we work now. This is our most recent, or one of the most recent Ethereum developers meetup that we now co-organize in our office. So, to take that into, what I'm trying to get people to realize is that, the point of this technology is really to come full circle and empower people like ourselves to build the things we want to see. So it's important that as we kind of grow as a community, we don't forget where we come from. And we don't forget to give back to the communities that gave us what we have today. And so we're extremely proud to be hosting that meetup that brought us together in the first place. And so who are we and what do we actually do now that we have an office and everything? So currently we're working on a few really exciting projects. And I'll start with one of them. So Lodestar is a TypeScript implementation of the beacon chain, but really it's so much more than that. It's all of the kind of in-browser ecosystem that'll be necessary for ETH 2.0. That's an extremely exciting project to work on and so much fun to be a part of the kind of ETH 2.0 implementers community. I mean, everyone is so close and extremely collaborative, and it's just been an incredible process to see how organically we've all come to kind of work together. Gossamer. So Gossamer is a Golang implementation of the Polkadot runtime environment. And so you can think of it as a piece of software that will enable you to build parachains in Go. And so that's obviously very exciting to most people because as Amr said in his talk at .con, only 1,000 people in the world write Rust anyway. So it's really important that we create tools with the understanding that people need to use these tools, right? We're not building tools for subject matter experts. We're building things for people. Because at the end of the day, it's people who are going to build the applications that change the world, not the smartest person in the world. It's people who see the problems and then can go and realize the vision to solve that problem. Another extremely exciting project that we're working on is the Go Ethereum client for Ethereum Classic. And so we've implemented the current hard fork and the upcoming hard fork into the Geth Classic client. And that's been an extremely exciting project because it's allowed us to kind of hard fork, a real mission critical chain and kind of go through the process of a traditional POW hard fork, which has been a lot of fun, but also obviously, extremely mission critical, and we have to be very careful with how we do something like that. And then Ethermint. So Ethermint is Ethereum on Tendermint using the Cosmos SDK, and it's basically a way to allow for Ethereum state to migrate over to Cosmos. And so this is a project that will enable Ethereum state to have proof of stake functionality and also then interoperability into any other Cosmos zones. So it's extremely exciting and a lot of fun. At the end of the day, we're basically creating a module out of the EVM so that anyone else building a Cosmos zone can bundle together that module with a whole bunch of other modules. So how did we get to building this blockchain infrastructure, and why? Why does it matter so much to us? So just over a year and a half ago, we started looking at our first implementation of a sidechain. So someone approached us and said, hey, we want this sidechain thing to be built. And so in the modern context, a sidechain is usually a fork of Ethereum. Like if you were going back a few years, sidechains were more to do with merge mining and stuff like that. But as Ethereum has kind of taken over the main stage, sidechains have come to be more relevant within the Ethereum context. And so the important part to see in these sidechains is that these are application-specific blockchains that are being built out of technology that was meant to be a generalized smart contracting platform. So people are asking us to build these things with technology that was never ever meant to do it. And so the problems and the issues that arise from that are immense, and we'll talk a bit about it more. And another important thing in this entire sidechain world is a bridge. So this application-specific blockchain would be pretty useless if it was stuck in its own siloed world. And so these bridges allow for these different kind of application-specific blockchains to communicate with one another. Obviously not on a protocol level, but abstracted in smart contracts. So it would be something simple like this that would sit on two contracts, and this bridge instance would communicate across the two contracts. And so what use cases, like what things have we actually built taking Ethereum forks and optimizing them for specific use cases? So a first example is a local community governed blockchain. I know that's a lot. But yeah, the requirements of this were that we needed unique consensus, we needed interoperability, and we needed high TPS. This is a project that was used by over 300,000 people in our city that was migrating from a centralized app to a more decentralized stack. And so, they had needs that most apps just don't have, because we don't start with users in Ethereum. We move towards users, hopefully, one day. So, when dealing with projects that already have a quite significant user base, you start to deal with things that you wouldn't necessarily ever have to consider when just writing a smart contract. And so what did this unique consensus look like? Well, within this local blockchain, by local I mean within our country, we had stores basically that were validating this bartering economy that existed. And so we had to make that happen. And really important for this was interoperability. This local kind of Canadian project needed to be able to interact with the wider Ethereum ecosystem. So a bridge was extremely important to be able to actually empower this project to be able to do the things they wanted to do. And then because it was a more trusted setup, high TPS was much easier to achieve. And so what did it look like? What did we have to do to make this happen? And my goal is, after the second example as well, is for you to understand how important, sorry, it cut out here, how important it is to take advantage of these new frameworks that are being built and have been built by different protocols to build decentralized applications in a way that makes sense for your project and not just for your kind of ideological, tribalistic feelings. So yeah, we had to fork Eth. We had to implement the parity bridge, and we had to implement this unique kind of POS. And so what did we learn from this? We learned that clearly we need modular consensus, and we learned this when looking at Ethereum site forks all over the world. Projects in Asia that have added DPoS to Ethereum. Unfortunately, when doing this to a client, you're not really able to maintain upstream compatibility because of how many breaking changes there are. And so, Ethereum was never built with the understanding that people are going to build on top of it, but not within it, right? And what I mean by that is that this is a generalized smart contracting platform to allow anyone to build anything in a global computer. But what if I don't want to use the global computer? What if I want to use the entire thing for something specific? And that's not too easy once you're actually writing the code and trying to get that to production. And also that hybrid models are necessary for scale. We need to understand that decentralization is a process, and it's something that is constantly evolving. And that if we think right now we have kind of the best understanding of what decentralization looks like in our day-to-day lives, then we would probably have had it already. And so we need to be open to understanding that, decentralization is a moving target that we have to be prepared to move towards, but we can't be held back by the limitations of our technology. And also local blockchains can be successful. It is very much the case in this project that over 20% of the city of Toronto uses this project. Why do all of these kind of blockchains need to only focus on kind of a more generalized approach as opposed to solving a real problem? And so example 2 was an interoperable attestation network. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's basically the same. The big difference with this project is that we had to add opcodes to Geth itself. And in our former project, we realized that Rust isn't something that our clients want to deal with. And so we implemented our own bridge in Go that allows for, allows for basically anything that the parity bridge allowed for, but just it's a more kind of accessible code base, especially for the people we're delivering code to. A really important part about this is that, we had to make a couple changes higher up the stack as well to Sol-C, Solidity, Remix to allow for these new opcodes to even make sense. And the sad thing about that is that the only upstream PR through that entire process was to Remix. So Remix is the IDE for Ethereum smart contracts, and at the time, Greg kept on trying to, control S just naturally, and it would save the page every time. And he thought, okay, why don't we just make it so that it doesn't save the page? And so that upstream PR made it into Remix. And that was honestly, out of a year of work, forking an entire open source stack and keeping it open source, that was the only upstream contribution that was made. And that's pretty sad. The point of open source is that we work together, not to fork these things and just go off on completely divergent paths. We need to be building infrastructure with the understanding that different people are going to want to build different things with it, and that we can collaborate to create generalized enough infrastructure so that we are able to coordinate those kind of base kind of things that we can all agree on. I think a really important point from all of this is that interoperability is only as useful as it is usable. And what I mean by that is that, it is one thing for you to send some arbitrary data across a multitude of parachains, But it's another thing for you to be able to build a parachain and connect to the Polkadot network, right? And so for us, it's really important to reduce the barrier of entry to getting into these networks and to interact with decentralized systems. And that's really important because when we talk about interoperability, we don't usually talk about interoperability amongst human beings. You know, this allowing for this technology to not just be for subject matter experts, but for people. And that's a really important point to stress. As we are kind of building these core pieces of infrastructure, we need to remember that we are responsible for building things that need to be usable. You know, we cannot just be building for ourselves. We've had enough of that. And kind of a final conclusion that I kind of want to leave everyone off with before hopefully there are questions, but we'll see, is that, you know, different problems call for different solutions. And, you know, you don't have to agree with the things that everyone is doing, but we can agree on certain things that we can decide to kind of take away the weight of how they control us, right? We don't have to decide that, make these kind of decisions for the future of these networks that isolate us from being able to collaborate with much larger communities when there's just so little of us here anyway. And yeah, these new blockchain protocols, Polkadot, Cosmos, they're made for these types of solutions. They're made for people to build application-specific blockchains. You know, we've been doing that with Ethereum clients for the past year and a half. This is something people want, and this is something people are building. And so we need to understand that this is a movement that's coming. And you can either decide to kind of be a part of that movement, or you can decide to completely disconnect from it and retire to being a Bitcoin maximalist. And yeah, so interoperability with other chains increases the ability to make these platforms usable. Like, we can't have interoperable protocols without having chains to interoperate with. And so this idea that chains are replacing other chains is something that we're really going to have to grow up from. Kind of that way of thinking that this is all kind of a zero-sum experiment, when in reality everything here is an experiment. So yeah, I think it's really important to just remember that different problems call for different solutions, and that there are people who are working on things that you might not agree with that have incredible intention and really do want to see the best use cases being built with their technology. And so instead of kind of thinking that, you know, we're here competing with one another, just know that if you're not designing your protocols with other protocols in mind and making that migration for developers that much easier than the next protocol, no one's going to use your platform. If only subject matter experts can use your blockchain, I'm sorry, but no one's, at least in the real world, going to care enough to learn. And that's something we need to start to realize. You know, if we want real people building real stuff, we need to abstract this technology to a place where not just subject matter experts are building, but people are building this for the world, for themselves. So this is my information. We're going to be here all week. We're going to be at DAppCon, ETH Berlin. A bunch of us are here from our ETH 2.0 team, from the Gossamer team, Ethermint. And it would be great to talk about, even if actually Ethereum Classic team. So yeah, it would be great to talk, to hear what everyone's working on, and just to see how we can collaborate together. We honestly, and the GitHub is wrong. It's github.com/chainsafe. We sliced that. So yeah, please send an email if you want to connect. And if you want to just say hi, that's cool too. We'll be here for a little while. Thank you very much.